Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be sharing with you some information about the father of psychoanalysis himself. His name is Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud was born in the town of Freiburg, Austria Republic in 1856, which is modern-day Pribor, Czech Republic. He moved with his family at age 4 to Vienna, Austria. And it was there that he completed his traditional schooling as well as his higher education, where he went to study medicine. He studied at the University of Vienna, and he graduated from there in 1881. It was in 1882 that Sigmund Freud married his wife, and throughout both of their lives they had 6 children together, 2 of which became psychoanalysts and 1 who became an artist. After he completed his education with a focus in neurology, he went on to study and completed some of his early works at Vienna General Hospital. So Freud, his early interest and contributions were those as they related to medicine. He had just graduated. He was working as a doctor in Vienna General Hospital. And his research shows it was related to neurology. He was particularly interested in nerve tracts. He had a number of seminars on nerve tracts, and particularly those as they relate to the central nervous system. He studied the neuron channels or tracts of the central nervous system. He developed a new staining process in 1884 which improved the fidelity of slides, that they could be better studied using his new staining process. He also had an interest in cocaine. Some of the criticisms of Freud include that he maybe dabbled in cocaine throughout his lifetime. He was fascinated with it and how it could be used as a medical anesthetic. He developed and was a proponent of using cocaine as a ocular anesthetic. It could be placed in a solution and then dropped into an eyeball prior to procedure. He studied aphasia, which is the inability to recognize words or process language. So you might have heard of word salad, just speaking, but it doesn't make any sense. That's one type of aphasia. He proposed that there was a different type of aphasia, agnostic aphasia, which has not stuck with the times. He believed that aphasia was not limited to damage of particular structures in the brain. He was going against people of his time. He also studied child development, and in particular he was interested in autism spectrum disorder in children. Now we're going to get into the exciting theories of Freud, his psychological theories. These are ones that have kept with us, the ones that are used most often in practice to this day. So Freud, to his credit, is mostly known nowadays for his contributions as they relate to psychoanalysis. He first began his forays into psychoanalysis with Jean Charcot in 1885, ending in 1886. There he watched the observation of hypnotherapy, and this is where he first got his ideas of the unconscious mind and as it plays into his later work. About 10 years later, in 1895, he began writing. He published studies in hysteria with his friend Joseph Breuer. This is where he began proposing phobias, hysteria, and paranoia, and some explanations of how all of these come about, pertinently as it relates to trauma in childhood. He also wrote in 1899 the interpretation of dreams. Following that, which was mainly about dream analysis and the unconscious mind playing subliminal desires out in dreams, he released in 1901 Der Psychopathologie der Alltagslebens, which is about the id, the ego, the superego. It's about all of the ways the subconscious mind guides us in our day-to-day life. So this is where a lot of his fun stuff comes in, such as the life instinct and the death instinct, or thanatos, a phenomena which we would say is protective to prevent us from doing these things by letting us know how easy it would be, right? Lastly, one of his most major developments is the psychosexual theory of development. These are the life stages of the oral, the anal, the phallic stage, latency period, and then the genital stage. And that's what everybody's been waiting for. So Freud's theory of psychosexual development was composed into 5 phases: the oral phase, the anal phase, the phallic stage, the latency period, and then a final genital stage. And this theory was supposed to encompass and explain stages of development throughout the life course. The oral phase, the purpose it was to serve would be to help with suckling, the suckling reflex. And this would be a preoccupation with the mouth as a source of pleasure. The anal phase that he proposed was similar to the oral phase, just with the pleasure being derived from defecation, voiding, which was explained for the purpose of potty training, right? The phallic phase is the moving on to, from ages 3 to 6, to the genitals, and this is purported to be the explanation for development of a sexual identity. Then from the stages of 6 to 8, there was a latency period. That is where the unconscious is suppressing any other sources of pleasure. This is just sort of a formative time in its own respect. And lastly, there's the genital phase, which is from adolescence and onwards, which is the desire to reproduce. So fixations, as far as fixations go, those would be when the developing body encounters trauma. A fixation may develop based on the stage of life that the individual is in. So if one was to have a trauma in the oral stage, that would be a oral fixation, and some manner of behavior that one might engage in as a fixation would be smoking, eating compulsively, or chewing gum. There's anal fixation, which would be translated to either obsessive compulsions or similarly disorganized behavior, depending on the type of trauma. Then you have a phallic fixation. This is where Freud proposes his Oedipus and his Electra complex, and basically just an over-fondness for one's parents, right? And then lastly, there would be the damages to the genital phase, which would result in either impotence, frigidity, or any number of relationship troubles that one might have. Why is Sigmund Freud important to the field of practice that we're studying? Part of why Sigmund Freud is still relevant today is that his theories started to assert things that up until that point no one else had proposed, such as that cognitions, what we think, are ultimately what cause or can contribute to mental illness. Another one of his contributions, he went on to inspire the psychoanalysts who followed him in coming up with their theories, such as Carl Jung and others. He introduced the world to psychoanalytic thought. He laid the groundwork for the beginning of talk therapy in the 20th century. So ultimately he had a lot of valuable contributions to the realm of psychology. So for as cool as some Freud's theories were, some of the things that he did and some of what he came up with were kind of uncool too. So A lot of the problems with Freud's theories are that they are not empirical. They can't be tested scientifically. They are assertions of how the brain works, but there's no way for us to really measure that to be true. Freud also proposed some, for lack of a better word, goofy theories such as the Oedipus and Electra complex. And he also engaged in some unethical behaviors of his time, such as suppressing theories on child sexual abuse that could have been very valuable because he wanted to propose the theory of the unconscious instead. So, in conclusion, that is Freud, the man, the myth, and the legend.